Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Cinema Savvy. It is myself, George, joined once more by Aaron for another episode of the Pixar Retrospective. And this week we are going to be talking about Finding Nemo, the 2003 film directed by, I've forgotten his name. I'm going to. How the fuck do I. You know, when your mind goes absolutely fucking blank? Andrew Stanton.
Yeah.
Right, I'm going to do that. Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Cinema Savvy. It is myself, George, joined once more by Aaron for another episode of the Pixar Retrospective. And this week, we're going to be talking about Finding Nemo, of course, released in 2003 and directed by Andrew Stanton. A film set in the ocean, a film that maybe we've got many memories attached to, a film that's lived very long in the memory, that spawned a sequel whilst being the prequel, not quite The Godfather Part 2, Finding Dory, unfortunately, but we'll be talking about that in several months' time. But as always with the series, we do want to hear from people watching at home, so please do comment your thoughts on Finding Nemo. And also, with this video going up in December the 23rd, this will be one of our final videos in the build up to Christmas. Not that this is a Christmas film, we've got a Christmas series that is running on the channel. There's lots of things happening in between, so as always, there's a lot of things on social media. You can find out what we're up to. We've got Stranger Things coming up, we've got the Christmas series, we've got the Pixar Retrospective. 2026 is around the corner. There's going to be things happening that year, no doubt, so do stick around. But bring you back, Aaron, and you joined me on the very first episode of this show, Toy Story, which, for a fascinating behind-the-scenes insight, there's been 5 episodes recorded, and we're recording within an hour of that first episode going up on YouTube. I have no idea if there's been abusive comments or if anyone's even bothered to watch it so far, but it's great to have you back on. It doesn't feel like it's 4 weeks ago like it will be for people watching at home. But I'm going to put you on the spot like I did on the Monsters Inc. video or the Toy Story 2 video, one of the two. I want to know, because you've already done your Pixar memories on Toy Story, your favourite Pixar character?
Oh God, that's an even worse question. Oh God, why am I suddenly blanking on every Pixar film? I think because my favourite Pixar film is Monsters Inc. I've got to go with the duo of Sully and Mike. Very easily could have gone for someone from Up or someone from Toy Story, but I think that duo is not just iconic, but also like they are two of the funniest characters in any Pixar film, full stop, because of their chemistry, because of who they're voiced by. So yeah, considering I'm on the spot here, I'm gonna go with Mike and Sully, but very easily could have gone with like Buzz, Woody, even the kid from Up and stuff like that. But I'm gonna stick with Mike and Sully.
That's fair. I don't think you're the first person to say that. I've got a list somewhere, but I've moved my desk around. But that is a very popular decision and a very good decision to I'm going to add in is another early Pixar banger. And what we'll be talking about with Finding Nemo, as we have with all of the videos in the series, we'll be looking at some behind the scenes, the animation, maybe some innovation to go along with it, our thoughts on the characters, stories, the legacy. We'll be previewing everything, so we'll be covering that in this. And with it just being 2 of us, this may be a little bit shorter than a couple of the other episodes so far, but we will kickstart with the IMDb plot synopsis, and we finally have a perfect one, just over a line. After his son is captured in the Great Barrier Reef and taken to Sydney, a timid clownfish sets out on a journey to bring him home. Sounds a bit like Saving Private Ryan at the end, if I'm honest. Now I've just said that out loud. But it'd be a very different film. God, imagine a Pixar animated World War II film.
I would actually pay good money for that.
That'd probably be like that. Do you remember that Sainsbury's Christmas advert like 10 years ago for the 100th anniversary of the war where they did the old footballers playing? The Pixar would probably do something like that. And different conversation. Don't AI it, no one please. But yeah, I've really detracted. Where I will go is talking our memories with Finding Nemo. And I think me and you might have a bit of an open discussion. I know you spoke about episode briefly on Toy Story, but we'll revisit that for anyone that hasn't. But for me, I didn't see Monsters Inc. until I was like 15. Like, I didn't see it at the time it came out. I knew contextually of it. I remember the cereal. I spoke about that a lot last week. but I've got very distinct memories of Finding Nemo. And at this point in time, it's 2003. It's the summer. I'm 7 years old. I'm conscious. That's the right way of saying it. You know, when your memories are clearer.
Mm.
Um, it's in that phase. And I do remember this cinema trip because my auntie took me and one of my sisters, not both of them, which is weird. She used to take us away for like weekends because she didn't have kids at that point in time. And we'd love it because we'd get to go to the cinema, we'd get spoiled. But for whatever reason, I didn't get it to myself this time. I had to share with one. And we did go to the cinema. We saw Finding Nemo. I remember loving it. I just have a distinct memory of being in the Solihull Touchwood car park after. I don't know why, because I lived in Solihull. We'd always go to the Cineworld that's still there that I very rarely go to now. And then I saw it again with all my family. So it was a film I definitely have memories of at the cinema. I remember it being big. I can't sit there and say I had merchandise or whatever. I just remember getting the DVD. And it wasn't our first DVD. We'd had a DVD a couple of years, but I know this is the highest selling DVD ever made. Um, so everyone probably had it. And
Mm.
it was a big film in our childhood. It would be put on at school. It was very watchable, very likable, very
Mm.
quotable, as many are. And I don't want to say I was the perfect age for this film. I think it's just you're at that age. Nemo's come out, you're aware of it. And anyone who's seen it, whether adults, kids, younger than I was then, probably loves it. And the kids of today
Mm.
probably love it too. It's about fish. And everyone also now knows clownfish, thanks to this film if they didn't already. The floor is yours.
Mm. So I kind of said this previously in the Toy Story one, but I'll reiterate it here. Is that my earliest memories of going to the cinema are the likes of Spider-Man 2, Scooby-Doo 2, and Shrek 2. And in my head for years, I've always thought that like, oh, those must have been like the first films I saw in the cinema. But I have a very distinct memory of seeing Finding Nemo in the cinema. And considering that came out the year before those films are mentioned, I've pretty much surmised over the years that like this must have been the first ever film I saw on the big screen. Um, which, looking back at it, I'm like, that's a hell of a first film to see
Yeah.
in the cinema. And I do remember having like even though I was really, really, really young back then, I still have like very vivid memories of some of the specific scenes from this film. And having rewatched it for this video, it brought back a ton of memories just flooding in. But for me, Finding Nemo was a bit of a weird one outside of that because like I've always loved this film, still do. But when it comes to like growing up with it in merchandise, I more had Toy Story and Monsters Inc. stuff and didn't really have much Finding Nemo stuff. Despite knowing how much I've always loved the film. I always had the toys, Toy Story and the Monsters Inc. and even a little bit, I think, from A Bug's Life, but never Finding Nemo. Like you said, though, I do have a lot of fond memories with the DVD, and I think I abused the DVD special features, and I think there was even a game on it as well, back when DVDs were actually good and had extra stuff on them. And that's the one of the fondest memories I have with the film, outside of the film itself. That is just spending hours just playing the games on the DVD. And I know that there's an option on the DVD, and I only found this out for the rewatch of this. The same option is on the Blu-ray, is that you can just get rid of the menu and just stare at the Great Barrier Reef, and just as like a mini screensaver. And I love the fact that they've kept that. So yeah, those are my memories with the film.
It's really interesting you say that because when I got to the end credits, which kind of does that, where it's got the
Mm,
text going up over, uh,
mm,
at the time of us recording, not releasing, I just watched
mm,
Avatar, as in
mm,
the very first one, not that end.
mm,
The end credits are just like location shots of Pandora with the text over the top. And
mm,
watching Nemo like 2 days after, I was like, oh, like was this a thing, or was I
mm,
just very coincidental to the two films I happened to have watched this weekend? And it is interesting with Nemo with that because it is gorgeous looking, the film. I've got to say
mm,
that you can't really appreciate that as a child, and that's why I think I
mm,
love Pixar a lot as an adult. that you're able to take a different appreciation. Whereas some of the studios, without name dropping or being disrespectful, you can look at some of the production cycles as, oh, actually, not like they're frauds because that's disrespectful, but you can look at some things like, not sure about this, or not sure about them or their
Yeah.
approach. And there's a lot of behind the scenes we'll get to talk about with Finding Nemo. But I did also want to talk contextually about one thing that blew me out the water, no pun intended, when this came out. Willem Dafoe is in this film. And I remember when I heard that voice, like in my brain, it just would have been the Green Goblin thing, because I was like, Green Goblin's in this film. Like, he's voicing a fish that some reason, I don't know how or why, actually reminds me of Willem Dafoe. I don't know if it's the mouth, I don't know if it's the animation style. It's not some weird, freaky shark tail. It's not designed to look like him. But it's like if Willem Dafoe was a fish, that's exactly who he would have been. Not a human, not a shark, not anything else. Perfect. And we'll talk about him later when we get to characters, but that was a huge thing for me as a kid, because I love the Green Goblin. It's one of my favourite ever villains, as you can tell by the helmet behind me on the camera. Yeah, big fan of Willem Dafoe. But where we'll kind of go with this, let's talk some behind the scenes. So this is directed by Andrew Stanton, and the origin of this film, and this is what I love with early Pixar, when we spoke about their approaches, the ideas, John Lasseter, everyone went through the space cowboys into space phases as kids. Everyone's thought about what happens if your toys can talk. Monsters Inc. What happens if the monsters that come scaling in the night could be done into a film? Finding Nemo is a really interesting one, where Andrew Stanton apparently had very specific memories of his youth, that he used to love going to the dentist because he would look at the fish in his dentist's fish tank, and that became somewhat an origin of the story. And on top of that, when his son was young, he was apparently owned up as a very overprotective father, and he says he distinctly remembers a day where they went out for a walk at a park and he was too overprotective of his son, and that stuck with him. No context of what happened that day, not our place to know. I hope it's not something as simple as the kid wanted to go on a swing and he said, no, you'll hurt yourself. But those two ideas meshed together to come up with what would be Finding Nemo. Did you know either of those? Because I knew none of this.
No, all of that's new to me, but that's genuine. I know what I mean when I say this. It's genuinely quite lovely, the fact that it's coming from such a personal place, despite how broad and simple the actual concept of the film is.
Yeah, what I think is important with this, and I'm not going to sort of diss on later Pixar films because they all have their own ideas. Pixar, whilst now it is part of Disney, I think it might have been 2006 when it got bought, so many of the ideas are the animators or the writers or somebody having a pitch for a story, and the studio being able to work that into that's a good story. Can it be a film? That's a good treatment. Let's take it one step further. And I think Finding Nemo is one of those where, I'm not saying today there weren't opportunities. Elio's came out, and the original director obviously departed the project, and there's a lot of behind the scenes on that. But I don't feel, and this is a generalization, that not only I don't doubt that Pixar staff could come up with a fantastic concept. I do not doubt that at all. What they'd have seen across their lives, encouragement, seeing films that's being made in the early noughties, films they would have grown up with.
Yeah.
I'm not going to just sit here and berate Disney at the same time, but I am sat there saying that would be so much harder now to get someone to get a concept to be approved, to go to the board, to go to Disney, to then say, yes, we agree, do it. Especially for a studio where their original projects haven't blown up in recent years, and they are going back to sequels, to reboots, to other things. And it's kind of, as you said, lovely is the right word. It's quite wholesome. And I don't feel that word's used a lot in film, but it's a very wholesome idea. Like, I'm sat there thinking about my dentist. Like, I hated my dentist as a child. He wasn't like nasty. I just hated going to the dentist. There was no fish tank there. But the fact someone had that connection to a memory, of recurrence of once or twice a year, to then, as an adult, want to pitch it, I think it's ingenious. And I want to know what kind of fish were in that tank. Did they end up in the film? Because you'd think if he's had very specific memories of the fish tank, then there would have been some stuff that obviously only Andrew Stanton would know that himself. But yeah, I mean, your thoughts on the Disney side? Because I don't mean to be bashing them. It is a retrospective series, but for me, 5 episodes into the series and having
Mm,
4 completely different concepts, which the next couple of episodes are going to wildly be outlandish as well in terms of the
mm,
concepts brought into this animation. It is a very different studio 20 years later
mm.
compared to then.
Yeah, funnily enough, as you were mentioning all of that, I was actually trying to think in my head, would Finding Nemo be made today in the way that it currently is? And I don't think it would be. I think it would be a completely different beast in terms of the style, the tone. Visually, it probably wouldn't look dissimilar, just have, that technological upgrade. But I think because of the way Pixar is now, like they're not dissimilar to what they used to be, but obviously certain fundamental things have changed in, like you
Yeah.
said, in terms of the more heavy focus on sequels and different styles being introduced, especially when you get to something like Turning Red, which
Mm.
stylistically is very different to a lot of other Pixar films. Um, so yeah, I can see this film being made now, but it would probably not look or feel or sound like how it does and how we know it to this day.
I don't think you'd be allowed to the opening scene. And whilst it shows nothing,
Mm. Yeah,
I, as a kid, I'm not saying you don't understand it. I just
mm.
remember the little egg that's left.
Yeah,
I probably did put two and two together, but not enough to know the emotional damage you do as an adult with the opening scene that
yeah,
puts characters into the development cycles that they're in first
yeah.
in the film. There's just no way they'd allow that to be the opening. And I don't mean to be one of them
Mm.
ridiculous, like woke my day, none of that nonsense.
Yeah.
But I just think everything feels so
Mm.
predetermined, and that's not Pixar, that's not Disney, that's the film
No.
industry as a whole. Everything's ran by council. Could this upset
Mm.
some people? I don't want to be
Mm.
that guy. I was watching this like, would there be like a fish version of Peter kicking off about a film about fish? Like, I don't think this
Mm.
was particularly insulting to fish. I'll talk about some later on, some of the
Mm.
stuff that happened around the time it came out, but there is just certain things where I just think we're in a different era, and I think
Mm.
key is that Steve Jobs was running Pixar, John Lasseter was
Mm.
also running Pixar, and I think without those two, who were
Mm.
titans for this film studio, I
Mm.
think it's very telling, and
Yeah.
it's somewhat sad. But as you said, it would be different. It would look visually excellent, but there would be
Yeah.
something different about it. And some of the stuff like I've been able to read into, and I don't mean to
Mm.
segue, but it sort of sticks with it that the the animators would be doing scuba diving lessons and they'd be going to the barrier reef, they'd be going into the
Mm.
oceans because
Yeah.
they're trying to learn how the animators could animate. How could we make the fish look real whilst obviously also looking like they're in a Pixar film? A
Mm.
certain fish doing things a certain way. And I could just imagine, again, off no insider knowledge of animation
Mm.
studios, them being like, no, you cannot go to the ocean. Go and look at some clips on YouTube. And it gives a
Mm.
completely different experience to people that are going to be then doing that job.
Mm.
And they'd be looking at it from a very corporate producer who isn't a producer but was a finance person saying, no, that saves
Mm.
like $5,000 by not having to do this one trip. But
Mm.
for a film that's going to make hundreds of millions, what does that 5,000 difference? But does
Mm.
that make me sound a bit like one of them nutcases talking about back in my day?
No, no. I think the other thing that, on top of what you've said as well, that I'm only really thinking about going off of what you said about the way the concept came to Andrew Stanton, is that like there's a weird, well, not weird. It's quite interesting looking back at like especially the early run of Pixar films and how a lot of them are integrated around that central theme of like a child's imagination of like what if your toys came to life. The stuff that happens in the fish tank in this film is like what I would imagine a kid running around with their imagination of going, oh, I wonder what the fish are doing in the tank.
Yeah.
Or like you even said about Monsters Inc. Like that's the childhood fear of like, oh, there's a monster in your closet. And it's, I do find it interesting how a lot of that early Pixar run, I would say it kind of stops from Incredibles and Cars
Mm.
onwards. But
Yeah.
that first like 5 film run is very much rooted in childhood imagination and like seeing where they go with a certain concept based off of that initial thing. Even Bugs Life, even to an extent, is like, oh, the bugs down there. I wonder if they have like a little civilization and stuff. And I just find that really interesting that that's kind of a thread that goes throughout all the first few Pixar films that no one really thinks about until you really look at them from afar.
Yeah, it's almost like, I think mythology is the wrong word, but as you said, it's child's imagination, and there are all
Mm,
the thoughts people, because you would look at a fish and I think, oh, I wonder how they'd want to escape.
yeah.
Or you look at certain elements. Oh, could my family be superheroes? And
Mm,
it's such fascinating premises, and then the
mm,
studio builds off it and runs with it and makes it into something iconic. And there's probably
mm,
dozens of other ones that have never been done, and maybe they
yeah.
could have been done, but they couldn't get a story out of it. They couldn't get a film out of it. And
Mm,
something wild of this was finding out that this went into production before they began animation with a complete screenplay.
mm,
Now, that's not just rare for animation. That is rare in the industry these days. A complete screen.
mm,
I know it sounds really. Again, I'm going on a tirade of modern filmmaking. I don't mean to. James Gunn spoke really well recently about Superman. He's like, I will go
mm,
into my filming with a script done. I will go
mm,
to the CGI company with previs because I know what
mm.
I would like it to look like. And it's
Yeah.
really basic storytelling mechanisms. But I understand how rare it is to enter the production stage, especially for an animated film,
Mm,
without a full screenplay. And we've spoke about Monsters Inc. as well. When you've got two leads such as that and they're doing scenes together in the booth, you're
yeah.
going to get some wild improv
Mm,
that's great and works. And animation gives you the opportunity to do improv. The
mm,
Finding Nemo is the most, I don't want to say scripted, but
mm.
it's harder to do improv as a fish than probably anything else, particularly
Yeah.
with the actors they've hired for this and some of the changes that happened in the filming.
Mm,
Um, but before we get to the big behind the scenes drama that sort of comes afterwards, before, during,
mm.
any thoughts on that screenplay side of it?
Um, to be honest, I'm pretty. If I do say anything, it'll probably just be repeating what we've just said. But it is interesting to like, especially again, early Pixar, compare, like you said, the script, like with Monsters Inc. Even the tone of the film kind of feels like it's coming off the back of like, yeah, we've got a lot of comedic actors in these roles,
Yeah.
and we're going to let them kind of play in this thing that we're creating. Whereas with Finding Nemo, I think the only, again, as you were saying it, I was trying to think in my head, is there anywhere they could have squeezed potential like improv in? I guess the only way they could have is like if they gave Ellen DeGeneres, you know, some room to kind of go, right, you're kind of the comedic relief of the film, sort of.
Yeah.
You can kind of do what you want with this scene. That scene has to kind of go a certain way, but this one you can kind of do what you want. And outside of that, I'd say maybe even Crush, but even then, I'm like, there has to be a specific point to the scene that Crush is in. So I think Dory's like the only gateway they could have had to that. But I do like the fact that compared to the others so far, this one is like they've got a clear story, they've got a clear structure, they know what they're doing, and you can kind of tell it's like the most. Not to say that the others aren't polished, but there is a level of polish to the structure and story of this one compared to the others. Like Toy Story in areas, from a story perspective, can feel a bit scrappy on purpose. Same for Monsters Inc., where it feels, a bit all over the place at times. That's part of the joy of it. Whereas Finding Nemo's got a very defined start, middle, and end. And you can kind of, now knowing that, the final product makes so much sense.
Yeah, and it's fascinating, especially with the film having so many scenes set outside of the ocean. And we'll get to the group later on that we spend time
Mm,
with, but it's structured in a very unique way. Even the passing of time, when we
mm,
get the story being told, fish to fish, fish to fish, even that doesn't feel like a cop out. That feels like actually that's a very smart mechanism to move forward in the story, because it's got a
mm,
100-minute runtime. It absolutely
mm,
flies by every time, and there's a lot of different stories in play on this one. And something that is incredibly fascinating, which was gargantuan for the industry. This is one of the films that led to Eisner being fired as Disney's CEO. Eisner, who came on board, I think, in the 80s, that had been involved in Disney for decades, who was at the front of the Renaissance of the, you know, Disney animated better than me. Is it the Golden Era they call it, where it's like Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast era time?
Um,
Is that the Golden Era they call it, or
I
Silver Age, or
think
something?
I think it is just referred to as the Disney Renaissance, and then I
Okay.
think the era just slightly after that dips into like gold and silver. I think I could be wrong, but I know that run is always referred to as the Renaissance.
Yeah. So behind the scenes on this, Michael Eisner did not get on well at all with Steve Jobs, which is kind of funny saying that in 2025. And without going into a tangent about Apple, when Steve Jobs died, oh god, I don't want to just assume that. I want to say like maybe like 09/11 time. Like I just remember at school
Mm,
this huge thing. Steve Jobs died, and it was the guy that created, you know, that was at Apple. And
mm,
maybe because I was younger, I had
mm,
no knowledge of his involvement in Pixar until I was much older. And you look at what he was actually at the forefront of as an innovator, and I don't
mm,
want to make any comparisons to the fraud running the electric car company at the moment.
mm,
But Steve Jobs is the forefront of these, and Disney didn't own Pixar, which I guess is something. Maybe that's why we didn't think about Pixar at the time, because it was owned by Disney, associated to with Disney. But
mm,
Michael Eisner had told them he had no faith in this project, that the story didn't work, that it wouldn't be successful. Um,
mm,
Obviously, we're here talking about Finding Nemo 20 plus years later. Michael Eisner then gets fired by Disney, which
mm,
opens the way for Bob Iger to come on board in the mid
mm,
noughties. So, kind of a wow, bit of shooting yourself in the foot. There's been disagreements on other Pixar projects. I'm just going to say it. It's not just the film industry; it's every industry.
mm,
Old people in positions of power that don't want to give
mm,
up those positions of power. Um, it's in every sector you could ever imagine, and I just find it fascinating that the CEO of a film studio was like, "Nah, Nemo's not going to be a hit. It's not any good. This is rubbish."
mm.
And at this point in time, I believe this was the last or penultimate film on Pixar's contract with Disney. So
Yeah.
I'm going to assume, without knowing the insider information, that Disney were probably plotting something behind the scenes from the get go. Like, we don't want to lose Pixar as a studio because
Mm,
they're bringing us money after money after money,
mm,
merchandise after merchandise. And voila, Finding Nemo comes out. Eisner is removed, I think, in
mm,
2005 due to this. They first told him they wouldn't renew his deal. All the shareholders agreed. And then they
mm,
sacked him a short time
mm,
after. So love a bit of industrial company politics in the film industry.
mm,
It still seems very reminiscent of today with the amount of idiots in control at some of these companies,
mm,
and maybe even the fact that Bob Iger, 20 plus years later, is still in charge at Disney rings true to. I mean, I know he did leave, and his
yeah.
replacement was just terrible, and he was so bad they had to bring him back. But
Mm,
I think Bob Iger now, who was trying to launch a presidential bid, rumored to do so, probably isn't
mm,
going to do so after all being the front of all the strikes and everything else.
mm,
Um, it is interesting.
mm.
Do you have any thoughts on that, or was that news to you as well?
I mean, I didn't know any of that either, but it is just interesting, like you said, looking at it from a general perspective with most big studios and companies, and the fact that you always do get the begrudging old man at the top that is kind of set in his ways. But again, looking at like how well received and the fact that Finding Nemo is essentially like a modern classic now, along with most of Pixar's early stuff, it is a bit foolhardy of him to kind of not have faith in it, considering the films they had already produced at that time were very successful and also were brilliantly well received. It's a very foolish thing, and I was trying to think of an example of like someone who is in that position, who is older, who actually does the opposite of that. And the only example I've got is like it's not a studio, but like the only example I have is like Lorne Michaels with Saturday Night Live. Like he's still
Yeah,
in control of it, but he doesn't do a Michael Eisner. uh, he still lets the newbies have freedom and stuff, and he has faith in what they will do. And I know it's not a studio example, but like that is the best example I have of someone who is actually using their head and using it to push these the talent forward and do things that actually put stuff through that's going to be worthwhile, rather than being stuck in their ways and doing it the old way.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think it's a big problem that affects the industry now, and I think
Mm,
the people replacing those are no longer film producers or people involved in these businesses. They are now
yeah.
just studio suits. And without going
Mm,
into discussion, the world changing every other day. We know that Warner Brothers is up for sale. We know there's multiple
mm,
interested parties. We know a certain president wants to be involved in picking that party, which is very dangerous. But
mm,
it's not a win for the industry. I'm just going to say it. The only studio that should be buying Warner Brothers, I mean, in an ideal world, Warner Brothers aren't for sale anyway.
mm,
I'd only want to see Apple buy them, and they're not even in the discussions, which I think
mm,
is odd because they had a great relationship with F1, and I'm really
mm,
surprised that Apple didn't at least want to throw a bit in there. But maybe they just
mm,
don't have the interest, which is also fine, totally
mm.
understandable.
Yeah.
But at least they're committed to the theatre experiences, unlike Netflix. Um, but let's talk a bit more on animation. So I spoke about obviously the divers. Something I did not know, which really caught me off guard, because I'd love to see what this looked like.
Mm,
Apparently, when they were producing this film, obviously, I say whole film, a good chunk of the film is set in water, a big chunk of it in the ocean. They developed such a real looking ocean within the realm of animation that they
mm,
had to be told to make it look fake because it looks too real and they're going to think this is like live action. I was
mm,
gobsmacked reading that. And
mm.
it did make me think, I was like, if you really think about it, we don't see a lot of water as an animation itself, which is correct. And I've been, because I've been rewatching the Avatar films, I watched a
Yeah.
great behind the scenes documentary on Way of Water and how they did the underwater motion capture. You watch Avatar and it doesn't look like they're in water; it looks like they're on a set, but
Mm,
we just know it's underwater.
yeah.
This is kind of like that. That you only really notice the water when you've got the sunlight shining down and the shimmers, or when
Yeah.
the camera's veered up to look at the ocean.
Mm,
And I think it's such a great approach that they never went too extreme with this. And I know Little Mermaid is impossible to compare it to, which also handled water very well when there were scenes
mm,
there. But every time a fish speaks, you're not getting bubbles or ridiculous stuff.
mm,
I think the animation on the environments is the best looking Pixar animation at this point in time.
mm,
And I think whilst they're still, as I call it, figuring out the humans, because
mm,
they're not there yet, and we're seeing more humans in this than what we've had before, but they're still not quite there. We know the next film's going to be where they really have it nailed down. I think it's so also genius to go for fish because fish lend themselves to animation in a very easy way.
yeah.
And they didn't go for too realistic on the faces, and they also didn't go for too fake on the faces.
Mm,
There's like a very strange balance, and apparently the animators modeled the faces off of dogs. It's like, how
mm,
would a dog be in this to get dog facial expression so it's not too extreme either way? I think, again, at this point in time, this is their best animation in terms of the creation. This is the best animation they've done in the series at this point. Still one of the best 25 plus films later.
mm,
Um, but this is clearly groundbreaking in a way
mm.
that I don't think is spoken about.
Yeah, that's same as you. That's a mad fact. The fact that they were told to like tone it down in terms of its realism. I think it's even more mad in the sense that like when you look at Pixar now, even though they've still got like Pixar-y cartoony designs in places, the detail now is like so real. That's like the borderline opposite of that. And I just find it quite interesting that like fast forward 20-ish years and they're putting so much detail into it is that some of their stuff actually look. I think the one that actually comes to mind is The Good Dinosaur, because some
Yeah,
people had an issue with the fact that you've got a cartoony looking dinosaur but the backgrounds look actually photorealistic, and I think a lot of people had that clash of thing. I know Mark Commode mentioned it in his review back when the film came out, um, and I just find that quite interesting. Is that they were asked to tone it down for this, and then when you get to that in like 2016, and it's like the most realistic they're ever going to get. So yeah, I do find that funny, but yeah, it is still visually stunning. And even watching this again back on Blu-ray, and again, this is like the first time I've seen it in years. Even then, they still left like really minute little details that just make it feel a bit more real, despite toning it back. Like I think there was a wide shot with Marlin on the left and just empty blue sea on the right, and there were just these little specks of stuff just floating around on top of the shimmers of light and the stuff you mentioned. But just again, adding those little details in. This is something we mentioned in the Toy Story review as well. It's just like they didn't have to go in and add those details, but the fact that they have really gives it a layer of like care and attention that I think some studios wouldn't maybe go that far in doing. Even when like a fish is out of the water, they're shimmering in a way that looks genuinely real, but they still look cartoony. It's that weird middle ground, but yeah.
It's the finest of lines,
Mm.
and if you cross it, it's disaster. But
Yeah.
if you don't get close enough to that line, it's
Mm.
also not going to work. It's so delicate, and I think
Mm.
for Pixar, who were in these early days as well, been so well at working within their limits as a studio, this is really out there, and it's so fascinating that I'm glad you brought up Good Dinosaur. I don't think there's been any of their films, not including Dory,
Mm.
set in water since. I say that in a weird way, like water's a common ground. But
Trying to
concept
think.
wise,
Mm.
it's not like, oh, we've hit this point, now we can do this. It
Yeah.
probably adds to what they're working on behind the scenes that, well, if we can do this, we can do humans. And I keep calling it almost like the human section on the schedule, that they're getting better and better and better at doing human characters, at being at a point to animate humans.
Mm.
And I guess a really good criticism, I can't remember, it might have been Paul that said it, was almost that once Pixar figured out how to animate humans, they've sort of never really looked back. And it's hard to look past that because we're talking about fish today. We spoke about monsters last week. The week before is toys. The week before that is bugs. And then you hit the human level. Okay, you're going to get cars and loads of other ones. But certainly in the last 10 years, even when you've got Onward, which is the fantasy film, and I don't mind Onward. I don't mind saying that. I've seen it once. But it's like, you're basically human. You're just purple with stretchy ears. Like, you might as well be human. Go out there with something, and I'm curiously optimistic for Hoppers. Because there's humans in it, but it's like, great, a film that's going to be about animals, maybe? And I'm like, I really hope it does something different. The trailer looked outrageous, the recent one, if I can say that. And no one's talking about the trailer because it came out the same day as the Hunger Games trailer, which is already a bad sign of how to release a trailer when you're doing it on that day. But let's talk about the story. So I'm not going to talk about one ball after another, but I will say this, that watching the opening scene, I just had an image of this film, but one ball after another. Not Pixarified Leo, but there's a lot of very reflective scenes of these two films. The story itself, the story of the anxious father with the only child, scared about letting him go, and almost restricting your child into not doing something stupid, but basically you can lose your kid and chase the ocean to find him. I love the story of this film, and as someone that doesn't have a kid, I can't relate in that respect. But I think everyone can relate in terms of their childhood, of maybe parents restricting them, the frustration, the anger that you get with not being able to do certain things. I sympathise with Nemo as a character. I sympathise with Marlin as a character. I loved the story. And I think the key for me with the story is the adventure. That yes, you have this simple premise of, I need to find my son. It's the characters on the way. It's the environments. You can't really do an ocean film without sharks. You kind of, I mean, you probably could have done it, but everyone would have been like, where's the sharks? Everyone would have been like, where's the jellyfish? Like, the iconic images of the ocean, shipwrecks and everything. Nothing ridiculous like going to the wreck of the Titanic, but it's such a fascinating way to making this film. And I think the reason this film works is purely on that journey from father to son. It's not necessarily their relationship, for me
Mm.
at least. It is who you're spending time with, who you're going to meet, what are they going to get up to on their way. And I think
Yeah.
that's why the film works. And on top of that, that's one story.
Mm.
You then got a second, equally as great story, which is the fish trying to escape from Fish Tank, which
Mm.
a premise by itself, probably not good enough to be a feature-length film. Probably would be a great short film, but they absolutely made it work, interweaving it with the ocean story. I love this. Sorry to have
Mm.
just gone on a big tangent. The floor is yours.
I'm trying to remember what I was going to say. Yeah, with the as much as I love the fish tank stuff, and it is like some of my favorite scenes in the film. The now having watched it back for the first time in a while, the actual core story of the dad and the son is it's weird. As I was just thinking about it as you were retelling it as well, it handles a storytelling trope that usually, when some people handle it, gets on my nerves. But this film does it in a way where it just establishes what the situation is within the like first 5 to 10 minutes, does it very quickly, addresses a problem, and then the inciting incident happens, and then the plot just kind of kicks. And I like the fact that they don't linger too much on it. They just establish it's a thing, and then just get on with it. Um, but there are other films, and the example I'm going to go with here is the first one that came into my head, because as much as I love this film, it's one of the biggest issues I had with it, is Avatar: The Way of Water. Um, is that they went really hard into the trope of the children obviously know what they're doing and are trying to do something, but the parents are constantly stopping them because they think they know best. Basically, doing a Michael Eisner. And that trope, sometimes it can work, but it's one thing. Again, I love the film, but there is one thing that is the one aspect of that film that really grated on me because it got repeated so much, and it was just like the kids obviously know what they're doing. Listen to them, and then Jake Sully just says, "No, you know better, because I'm your dad," and that trope really grates on me, and it really did in that film. Whereas here, again, it's established. We know the dynamic, and to be honest, there are valid reasons from both sides.
Yeah.
And then the plot just kicks in. So you're not given much time to stew with it. It sets it up, and then they just get on with it. And I love that. I absolutely love it.
One of the best things they did. So in the original concept, the original early ideas,
Yeah.
the opening scene was going
Mm.
to be done as flashbacks throughout the film. So when you got into the film, you find out what happened to the mum. And
Mm.
I actually think that would have killed this film because,
Yeah. It
and
would
that's
have
why I was going
ruined the
back.
momentum.
That's it. And going back to the start, I was like, Disney wouldn't let them do that this day. Yes, it's brutal to kill theoretically the mother and all the other kids. I mean, I never
Mm.
thought Barracuda looked scary until I saw this film. The way it just sort of
Mm.
sits there in the ocean watching them. I think I read that barracudas aren't in that part of the ocean. Like they
Mm.
intentionally put something that wouldn't normally be there to bring in the fear factor for the, I guess you could call them oceanographers or whatever the fans of that stuff. But
Yeah.
yeah, the structure is so important, and the opening scene sets everything up. You know exactly what
Mm.
you need. It's the only child. His dad's lost everything, and
Mm.
you know even the name being done by the mum, and that's why you understand why the dad is the way he is. And then you've
Mm.
got the son who needs to just go and do his own thing like every kid wants to. The Avatar's a great comparison point as well.
Mm.
And I think again, if you'd have broken that up into flashbacks, I just don't think the film would work. I don't think it's
Mm.
long enough to break up. And I think you'd
No.
lose momentum, and the film gains so much momentum. The structure of it is so powerful when you get into these moments. Even if you think
Mm.
it's all hunky dory, then you're going to get another thing happen. There would just have been no perfect time to have brought anything else in.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm not saying we need flashbacks for everybody. You know, you get depth on
Mm.
people like Willem Dafoe, who his fish has a backstory, and there's so
Mm.
much that goes on. I find it really interesting. But let's talk about some of these characters in more detail because this is where I might maybe get told off. I'm going to kickstart with Marlin, who okay, it's called Finding Nemo. And Marlin's the lead.
Mm.
Now, this is the big behind the scenes thing. Albert Brooks was not the original voice
Mm.
of Marlin. it was William H. Macy, who, by the way, I'm going to plug Train Dreams, who is phenomenal in that
Yeah.
in the scenes he's in. Um,
Mm.
he was originally cast. He recorded his lines.
Mm.
Apparently, Pixar had to make a very, very difficult decision just to say
Mm.
this really isn't working. The film's not working with this, and we need to swap you
Mm.
out. Again, difficult decisions that studios have to make. I will always respect them for making them. For
Mm.
what, not because the film ended up being good, but they are. I always talk about the different conversation Phil Lord Miller on Star Wars. On
Mm.
paper, phenomenal directors. Look at their work pre-Solo. Look at everything they did.
Yeah.
You'd want to take that and give them a chance. Gave them a
Mm.
chance. It did not work out, especially with what you hear about on set. That absolutely made more sense to call it a day, bringing Yvonne Howard to steady the ship and go back to basics.
Mm.
I don't mind it when a studio makes tough calls, but I have this to say: as understanding as I am of Marlon,
Mm.
and I like Albert Brooks' performance, this I don't like Marlon as a character. And this
Mm.
isn't going to be the only Nemo character I say this about. As a kid,
Mm.
I'd never cared for him that much. Okay, he's the annoying dad, and you're a child, so it's a bit that. But even I'm older, I'm still like, I just don't like this guy. Like, if I didn't
Mm.
like your son, I'd want you to fail. And I
Mm.
know the whole point is his development, that he is selfish, that he's so selfishly thinking of his son and no one else. I know that's a part of it, but I just dislike the character. But I don't mind that.
Mm. I mean, I completely get where you're coming from. I don't hate him as much. I personally don't have an issue with most. It's a weird one for early Pixar films because, like, I don't really have an issue with a lot of the characters, and
Yeah.
because I've grown up with these films, I can't envisage other people voicing them. As good as William H Macy is, and again, plug in Train Dreams, it is a brilliant film. But because I think because we've all grown up with this film and because it is like the first one I saw in the cinema, I kind of can't imagine anyone else but Albert Brooks voicing Marlin. I can't imagine anyone else but Ellen DeGeneres doing Dory. These characters are kind of vocally stuck in my head. And personally, I don't really have an issue with Marlin. I can understand why you do because it's completely valid. But I do like the journey that he has, like as a character, and I like the relationship he has with Dory. And I don't know, it might be might be me just being big old softy, but like I don't know, it just works. I think it's lovely.
No, I agree with that, and I get that too. And kind of, if you talk about Dory too, voiced by Ellen DeGeneres,
Mm.
has the world changed around Ellen DeGeneres in the last 10 years since Dory? I've got another big controversial. Well, I don't know if this is probably deemed more controversial pre-COVID than now.
Mm.
Um, I despise Dory as a character. I
Mm.
hated her as a child. I really hated her. Probably a bit too much considering she's a fish.
Mm.
Um, Maybe because it's the short term memory loss annoys me, but I get it's part of the character. I
Mm.
just never cared for her. Um, I still don't like her today. I know that sounds really
Mm.
horrible, and I shouldn't get annoyed about a fish. But when I see people like worshipping her as a character, when I
Mm.
see her getting her own film,
Mm.
I there's probably many reasons I dislike Finding Dory. I've only seen it once. So I'm not going to say dislike. That's too strong a word, but I never was in on the Dory stuff, if that makes sense. Like, I never
Yeah,
gravitated to
no,
the
that's
character, the
fair.
concepts. I found her annoying, and with this
Mm.
film, I would much rather get away. I love the characters they meet.
Mm.
I love meeting the sharks. I love meeting the school. Okay,
Mm.
but meet the jellyfish, but you meet Crush and the turtles. It's like, what I was saying, the adventure is so great. I just
Mm.
hate the two people on that adventure. And then you got the aquarium group, which we'll talk about in a bit, but I love everything going on there. I
Mm.
just never. Dory was just like,
Yeah.
like
It,
not die, that's a bit psychotic, but I just
mm.
very rarely, and considering of how much I like the film, I find it fascinating to myself that I can't theoretically stand two of the leads, and I love this film.
No, I get where you're coming from. Dory's a weird one for me because, like, I think when I was a kid, I thought she was like hilarious, but again, I was a kid. I didn't really know much better. I thought, she's given all the quotable lines in the film and all the funny bits. So, like, as a kid, I'm gonna find it funny. Watching it back, though, this is a weird one. I don't mind the character. I never quite understood the unabashed hype around Dory, like you said. Never quite understood that level of loving the character. I've always just thought she was fine. She serves her job. I think again, watching it now, some bits can be quite grating, especially when you first meet her. She can be actually a bit much. But again, similar to Marlin, I think she kind of tones down over the course of the film to the point where it's like, okay, by the end of the film, she's actually quite like bearable and is actually quite a lovely little character. But again, never quite understood the unabashed hype around her. I've always thought she's fine, and that's kind of it. I guess the same about Marlin, but again, for some reason there was a massive thing around Dory in the 2000s.
Yeah.
Whether that be the quotes or the humor or the
Bit of
design.
both. The Ellen show was massive as well. I guess is
Yeah.
when Ellen DeGeneres is so present as a persona, because I didn't
Mm.
really know until I was probably much older that she was a very, not like we didn't know actors, but the Ellen show I don't think was really a thing here in England. Whereas I bet if you're in
No.
America, a lot of people would have known that voice beforehand, probably, or if they
No.
were kids, they'd have maybe seen Ellen on telly after they saw Nemo. So it was probably in my teens. I was like, "Oh,
Mm.
Dory's actually quite famous."
Yeah,
Um,
I think when I was a kid, the only thing I ever knew her for years was, oh, she's Dory, and I kind of just always took that for granted.
I don't think I've seen her in anything else. If I'm being
No.
totally honest, I don't know if there's anything to look for. I've seen her wife in many things, great in Arrested Development, and I
Mm.
know that she's moved to the Cotswolds, so she's theoretically not too far away from where I live. But
Mm.
as Dakota Johnson very famously ended that show with "That's Not True, Ellen," one of the truly great moments of the modern era. The balls to say that on a TV show, different conversation.
Yeah.
But let me talk about something we love, and there is a name for these. Um,
Mm.
the group in the I said they're not in an aquarium, they're in a fish tank, but they are called the Tank Gang. That's an
Mm.
actual group name for them. Um, this is the thing I love most about this film. There's so many great characters you meet. To spend time in a fish tank with different fish species
Mm.
under the shared we don't want to be here. Where are you from? I'm from Ebit. I'm from the fish store. And the fact
Mm.
there's only two of them that are from the ocean, and to them it's like, oh
Mm.
my god, they've come from like Oz or something. Like,
Mm.
what's the ocean like? Is it as blue as they say? And I love this concept that to
Mm.
save Nemo, they have to get to the land. They have to get to somewhere
Yeah.
real. And this group of misfits, there's I don't know fish species, but there's a starfish. They're called bloatfish.
Yeah.
You've got
Blowfish.
clownfish. You've got it's not a crab that cleans them. I forgot what breed it is. It's not prawn. I can't remember the cleaning one with the
Oh,
French accent.
yeah. Is it a
Um,
cray?
oh, probably.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm
and
not a
then
massive
obviously,
fish person, but like I'm just
I'm just saying,
throwing something out there.
and then you got Willem Dafoe because I don't know
Yeah.
what his species is, but it's like who is the final fish to appear? And of course, it's Willem Dafoe coming out the shadows,
Mm.
playing the father role. I love this group, and again,
Mm.
it's kind of what I said earlier that I don't think you could do a feature length film on something like this, but
Mm.
I think they leave you wanting more, which is kind of what you want from a film.
Mm.
And for a band of misfits, and I love that they, not including the post credits scene, if you can call that all the joke, but they
Mm.
are the last scene straight after the credits begin, not the end credits.
Mm.
And it's a great meme of our times. Now what? They had their own
Mm.
story. The fact there's even a seagull that's mates with them,
Mm.
pelican, sorry. Oh god, I'm getting my animals mixed up. Animals, they're birds. By the way, I didn't know that pelican was voiced by Jeffrey Rush until yesterday.
Yeah. I
That blew
didn't
my
know that.
mind. And this is the same. I think this would have been the same year Pirates came out. Obviously, he was much better known before Pirates. Well, in Australia probably, but maybe to our generation, it's Barbosa. Oh, the King's Speech. I was like, oh my god,
Mm.
he's in Finding Nemo. I was like, that's fantastic. I'm I'm a big fan of these sequences, these characters, and yes, ultimately it is because it's just got Willem Dafoe in a Pixar film. I have no
Mm.
recollection if he returned for Finding Dory. That's how little I can remember about Finding Dory. I remember John Hamm was in it, and I remember
Yeah.
there's an octopus, and Saul Goodman was Dory's dad. My
Mm.
memory's very limited outside of those. Oh, and they made his fish look bold because they somehow made a fish look bold. Um, your thoughts on the Tank Gang? If you want to talk about them, any others too?
um, I, I mean, they have some of the most fun scenes in the film, and I've always loved the group. I think rewatching it now, I have more of an appreciation and a love for that gang in the group,
Yeah,
the gang in the tank, than I did before. But again, this kind of goes back to what we were saying about was it kind of the whole like imagination, like childhood imagination, bringing these things to life. It is pretty much how I would always envisage that sort of thing happening. Um, Not just in terms of how the characters act, but the fact that they've all got very distinct personalities. Like one's a germaphobe, one's got like dual personalities. One whenever he gets the blowfish whenever he gets anxious blows up. I just love the fact that they've all got little quirks, and the voice actors do a really good job of bringing them to life. But on top of the characters, I love the fact that the things that we all take for granted in the fish tank as just normal things as human beings. Um, I don't know what to compare it to, but like the best example I have is the fact that the fake volcano. I didn't realize this when I was a kid, but having rewatched it, having it be called Mount Hokalugi, which is obviously an American term for spitting, and I only put two and two together. It's like, hang on, they're in a dentist. Someone's probably hocked a loogie. That it's just really stupid little things like that. I'm like, oh, this kind of just all fits perfectly, even though as a kid I probably had no idea what that term meant. Um, but no, I love the voice actors in the tank. I love the character designs. The other one that actually really baffled, not baffled me, but surprised me the most, other than Jeffrey Rush, was finding out that Barry Humphries voices Bruce, and that's
yeah.
obviously Dame Edna Everage, and I cannot like put two and two in my head.
Bruce the Shark's amazing.
Yeah.
Everyone knows this. I'm scared of great white sharks. They're my biggest fear. This fish isn't. The animation design of Bruce the Shark is magnificent. The giant teeth, the
Mm.
rows of them, but the concept of they're basically like vegan slash alcoholics. Like they're
Yeah.
having their AA session in a
Mm.
very real warship that sunk off of Sydney.
Mm.
Apparently,
Mm.
love the minefield. I love all that stuff, and just the logic of fish are friends, not food.
Mm.
Genius, genius,
Mm.
genius to do that. So much fun. And sorry to degenerate someone who's from New Zealand, but I was watching this like, wow, if Finding Nemo was released today, Carl Urban would so clearly be Bruce.
Mm.
Um,
They'd probably squeeze Taika Waititi in there somewhere as well.
oh no, please don't. Yeah, but Eric Barner's one of the three, and I was like,
Yeah.
that's so random. Like that's like
Yeah.
George Clooney voicing the dog in South Park random who just barks. I
Yeah.
was like, hey, but I love Bruce. Again, the fact it's a not a Spielberg is fantastic in its own
Mm.
right. It's you can't really do the ocean fish film without sharks.
Mm.
Like that is the one thing everyone would want. Even the great joke of I didn't bring my friend today, and he's in his teeth. Like fantastic,
Yeah.
and it's scary. Like it's a great chase sequence with Bruce as
Mm.
well. It's ingenious. Who could have ever thought of what if we had a vegetarian shark? But they made it
Mm.
work.
Yeah.
Um, big fan of that sequence. And again, it's these little characters, isn't it? John Ratzenberger, who's in every Pixar film, he's the
Yeah.
school of fish,
Yeah.
and it's great because he's kind of maybe in later films to talk about more. He is the Stan Lee of Pixar to an extent.
Yeah.
Okay, he's not the founder creator, but John Ratzenberger has a cameo in every single Pixar film, and as he's got much older, obviously it's smaller, but it's like you hear his voice, and it's you'd be looking for Stan Lee in Marvel. In Pixar terms, you're you're listening for him, and he's got
Yeah.
such a great voice. And I think that's what Pixar do so well is they certainly. I don't want to criticize the last of Pixar because it's unfair, but the actors they cast are right for the role. A lot of sitcom stars again in this, particularly
Yeah.
the fish tank sequences. You've got different
Mm.
people, and it's a smaller role, but they want to be involved. And Jeffrey
Mm.
Rush is a real Cooper, and kind of having an Australian too. Something I haven't
Yeah.
spoke about. I don't think it's as big as it sounds, but this was the first Pixar film not set in America. I mean, to be
Yeah.
fair,
Yeah.
Monsters Inc. set in a fucking monsters world, so it's hard to say it's set in America. But I'm actually glad this is Australia
Mm.
because I mean I don't know my oceans well enough. I know you get the Great Barrier Reef and all that sort of thing. There's just something about this that's a bit cooler because it's in Sydney than
Mm.
another California-based place, another New York-based place. It's like we get to get some
Mm.
Australian voice actors, and one of the best gags of the entire film is the use of the psycho music on Darcy
Mm.
when they introduce her. Phenomenal. Her weapon isn't a knife; it's a fish in a bag that she just shakes until they
Mm.
die. I love
Yeah.
that. It's
Mm.
such a great role, and it's a great fear for the fish. They're not
Mm.
afraid of the fact they're in a tank. They're afraid of the person that comes to visit the tank.
Mm.
I think it's great.
Yeah. No, I love all of it, and even some of the other characters. Like I'm just looking through the list of voice actors. It's like there's some in there that where they're big now, and they probably were big around the time, but like they've got quite like Alison Janey is the
Yeah,
starfish, and like that, it's just little ones like that that kind of just really surprise me. Stephen Root as well as Bubbles as well. He's just a character actor that just pops up in random stuff, a bit like John Goodman actually. um, but yeah, I just love the I think this goes back to as well what we were saying with Toy Story. I love this more applies to the fish tank lot rather than the actual sea stuff, but I just love the fundamental concept of how their little life works. It was interesting to see in Toy Story of just like how does that fundamentally work. Monsters Inc. is the same, like how does an entire civilization of monsters operate? Same for Bugs Life, I guess, as well. And this one doesn't do it nearly as elaborately as those other ones, but I feel like in the fish tank bits, especially, they've got their own little because they're a group and they've known each other for a while. They've got their own sets of rituals and stuff, and it's just interesting to see that play out. Again, you don't get that much in the sea. Everything is pretty much just as you'd expect it to be, but obviously a bit heightened with like cartoonish designs and that in places. But that's one element of Pixar films that always fascinates me, and there it's definitely quite evident as well.
yeah. One thing let's talk about with Pixar, something
Yep.
new. The soundtrack
Mhm.
section. Um, this is the first Pixar film that Randy Newman did not score. I couldn't find the ins and outs. Did he decline it? Was he not asked to be a part of it? I do not have that knowledge to hand. But
Mm.
fear not, another Newman would be taking on the duty of composing this film. It would go to Thomas Newman. I believe Randy Newman is his cousin. Um, but more interestingly, something I've never heard of until now. When
Mm.
Randy Newman announced that he wouldn't be doing it for whatever reason, that they were looking at a new composer, the first choice to do the score to this film was Danny Elfman.
Mm.
I do not think he's done a Pixar film off the top of my head. I could be wrong, but
I don't
contextually,
think so.
no, 2003 Danny Elfman, that would have been one hell of a coup for Pixar. He passed
Mm.
on the project. They would then ask Hans Zimmer if
Mm.
he would do Finding Nemo. Of course, Hans Zimmer had done The Lion King at this point in time,
Mm.
which was very well. It was the highest grossing animated film until Finding Nemo came out. Um,
Mm.
Hans Zimmer would decline to do Finding Nemo. Again, I couldn't find specific reasons as to why. We know how busy he is as a composer when he's on his tours as well, but
Mm.
um, it would go to Thomas Newman, and not to discredit him. It sounds like he's the bottom pick. It's absolutely not contextually that. It's the fact that how big a name Elfman and Zimmer are in 2003. Thomas
Mm.
Newman's score in this, I think, is remarkable, and I think it's a very underappreciated score. that
Yeah.
whilst you're composing the ocean, it's very relaxing. But
Mm.
when it's intense, or when there are bad things happening, when Marlin's chasing Nemo, the
Mm.
choice of the guitar and the music, the shift of tone
Yeah.
instantly into, oh, this is very dark, like what's happening here.
Mm.
Meanwhile, you have the opening scene, which is all this lovely hunky dory. It's almost atmospheric music. I
Mm.
think the soundtrack is severely underrated. It doesn't have any blitz or booming, you've got a friend in
Mm.
me, or some of the
Mm.
things we have from other Pixar films, but I think this is one of the best Pixar soundtracks. I've listened to it in
Mm.
isolation as well, and it's very, very good.
Mm.
And I just don't think it's spoken about as much with this film, which it's understandable as to why,
Mm.
but it's something I do wish people spoke about a little bit more.
Mm. Yeah, no, I completely agree. I love Thomas Newman as a composer. I think he can, in discussions of like best composers working today, he sometimes kind of gets pushed under the rug compared to other composers, which I think is a bit a bit sacrilege, considering that's the guy that did the Shawshank soundtrack. But no, I do agree. I think this is one of the most underrated Pixar scores, especially. And don't get me wrong, I like Randy Newman and what he did for Bugs Life and Monsters Inc. and Toy Story work for those films, but I genuinely don't think it would have fit the tone of this one.
Agreed.
It almost going off of the picks that they were originally intending for, and even though this film can be playful at times, it's got a different tone to the other films that have already come before with Pixar, and you can kind of tell is that like because they had a story from the word go that was already done, because they had a specific tone in mind, you can tell that like no, we want like a composer that's attached to prestigious projects, because at that time Hans Zimmer, like a couple of years ago, had only just come off a Gladiator as well. So they maybe wanted a bit more like a prestigious name behind it and something to give it a bit more of a maturer feel and
Yeah,
tone. Which I know if it sounds bad ditching Randy Newman, but I think they made the right choice because what works, it works for the sake of this film. And I think they make another good choice going forward with the next film as well, because
yeah,
I can't imagine anyone else scoring The Incredibles other than Michael Giacchino with his jazz stuff. And the same goes for Thomas Newman with Finding Nemo. It's also interesting as well. As I was watching it again, when I've watched it in the past, I've not really taken much notice of the soundtrack, but deliberately listening out for it here, I did notice like little motifs and things that like kind of hint back to his other work. Like I think the scene that you were on about where Marlin's chasing Nemo and there's like a guitar and a sitar, I'm like, oh, that sounds a bit like his American Beauty score. And then the scene at the end where Dory and the group of fish are in the net trying to pull it down, there's a bit where I could have sworn he just goes back to his Shawshank, like the really cello bass deep like sort of thing. And I'm like, oh, he seems to be doing something new, but also picking from the stuff he's already done and kind of putting in little Easter eggs here and there. Probably not intentional, but like he's got a style that a bit like Randy Newman, where like if you hear it once, you know exactly which composer you're getting. And I don't know, that might just be me looking too far too far into it, but being a
no, I
fan of
agree.
his work anyway, I did pick up on those little bits where I'm like, oh, that's a bit like American Beauty. Oh, that's a bit like Shawshank. Oh, that's a bit like Road to Perdition. Even though it probably wasn't intentional, it's there.
Yeah, it's absolutely a film that needed a different type of composer. I love Randy Newman, and he does work for Monsters Inc. He does work for Bugs Life, absolutely Toy Story, and he does work for the other Pixar projects he'd come back for. But I don't think his type of music would work on Nemo, and I do wonder if they just from the outgo wanted somebody else, a different composer.
Yeah.
And Thomas, if I'm totally honest, I don't think Danny Elfman would lend himself to Finding Nemo. Maybe I'm just thinking of the Tim Burton side of it more, which is
Yeah.
unfair given how great his career is. But I couldn't see a Danny Elfman score working, and
Hans Zimmer
Hans
could
Zimmer's my
work.
favorite. I was going to say Zimmer's. Zimmer's the most varied of his work that he could do something completely different
Yeah.
without knowing him and ever asking him. I'm just going to outright assume straight away he was like, I've done animated film, I did The Lion King, I could probably never top that. The same way he spoke about Batman, I've done my Batman, I'm not doing it again, I can't do it again,
Yeah.
I've already done it. And not to group all animation together, but I think contextually this is 8 years after Lion King as well. And as you said, he's just in Gladiator. He had only just done the Pirates of the Caribbean theme as well. He hadn't even done the first film score, so busy guy. But let's talk about the legacy of this, because we spoke about the soundtrack. And on Kickstarter, this was nominated for Best Score at the Oscars. This was also nominated for Best Sound Editing, Best Original Screenplay, which is a real coup, and also was nominated for Best Animated Film, and it would win Best Animated Film, as many Pixar films would go on to do past this point. It, in 2003, grossed $871 million, was the second highest grossing film of the year behind Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, obviously the second $1 billion film. And through various re-releases, this now sits at a comfortable $940 million at the worldwide box office. And it was the highest grossing animated film for 12 months, until the film you mentioned earlier today popped up, which was only Shrek 2. Classic in its own right. Obviously, right now, the highest grossing animated film is that Ni Zhao 2, is it? Which I think this year's hit 2.3 billion or something insane from China. And for the conspiracy theorists that don't believe that box office is real, you're looking at Inside Out, which is like Inside Out 2, sorry, which is I think 1.6 or 7 billion. So animated films are a very viable currency. And at the time of us recording, Zootopia, Zootropolis, whatever the hell they want to call it in every country, the sequel is rumored to open with $500 million worldwide. So maybe by the time this video comes out, it might have hit $1 billion, maybe not. Avatar will also be out at the time this video going up, so we'll also see what that's up to. But and another lovely little statistic: the highest selling DVD of all time, which we spoke about earlier, which it definitely feels of you had to be. This wasn't a film chucked in a bundle. This was just one of them films that everybody had on DVD. I don't have that attachment to anything on VHS. Even with Blu-ray launching, I didn't ever feel like there was a certain Blu-ray film everyone was like, Blu-ray, get it. Even 4K, you've got, because at this point it's more your elite film circles that are still doing physical media, but DVD was the one where everyone just had Nemo. It's just something everybody had, whether they're adults, whether they're kids. It was always present. But what I do want to ask you is, as we slowly start to round out, your favourite scene from the film, in case you might not have spoken about
it. I've got two in mind. One's probably a distinct favourite, but the other one's got like a very core memory attached to it. The favourite is probably going to be... It's kind of split into two, actually. It's the two attempts at trying to escape the tank with Nemo going into the thing. I very, very easily could have gone for the jellyfish scene and the entire scene with the turtles, because those are also up there. But I think because I just have a thing for like heist films, a bit like Ocean's 11 and all that sorts of stuff, is that it kind of just feels like they're doing like a fish version of that, and I kind of love it. The other notable scene I want to mention is the anglerfish scene, because when I first saw that in the cinema at age, like, I don't know, 4 or 5, it scared the ever-living Christ out of me. And I think, even now, watching it now, I'm like, yeah, it's not as scary, but like that thing is still... The way that entire scene is executed is nightmare fuel. Like, whether you're a kid or not, like, it's not as scary now, obviously, but for me... But there's still a part of me that whenever that scene comes in, I just kind of flash back for a second to childhood me being absolutely scared in my mind in the cinema. And I don't think... It took me a while to recover from that scene. So that's the notable one, because I was traumatized by that. Thank you, Finding Nemo. Thank you, Andrew Stanton, for that. That was brilliant childhood memory right there.
Favorite scenes. There's so many. I mean, you mentioned the turtles are amazing. The fact that they're the hippies, stone, it kind of makes sense that it's nothing too intense. That it's You know, they're
Yeah.
just chilling in the ocean. They're in the little barriers, like a roller coaster ride. I love
Mm.
that conscious decision. I know that Andrew Stanton voices him as
Mm.
well, which I think
Yeah.
is great. I love that Pixar. Again, me criticizing modern stuff. I love that Pixar
Mm.
would get the directors or the animators in voice roles.
Mm.
Whereas again, today that would be like an A-lister. It'd be like Orkin
I
Fen was a turtle.
Yeah, I think back then it was also a case of like the main example I'm thinking of is Brad Bird voicing Edna Mode in The Incredibles. Is
Yeah,
a case of like he knew how he wanted Edna to sound. No one else could do the voice right, so he thought, "Screw it, I'm just going to do it myself
yeah.
because I know what she should sound like." And that's probably the case with this as well. It wouldn't surprise me.
I agree. Even Star Wars example, Matthew Wood voiced General Grievous.
Yeah,
Obviously, sound designer was Gary Oldman. Somewhere in the
yeah,
world, Gary Oldman's Grievous voice exists, but
mm,
it would go to Matthew Wood, who does a phenomenal job and made it his own.
mm,
Um, but yeah, I love the scenes that tell us. It's going to be the shark scenes for me. As someone that's scared of sharks,
mm,
it's the concept. It's how they play that scene out. I
mm,
just think it's excellent. I know you mentioned the escape scenes as well. I love them. You
mm,
forget how quick they not quick. You forget how close apart they actually
mm.
are. Um,
Yeah.
but it's I mean that the whole film is so pleasant in itself. Um, but heading into final thoughts on Finding Nemo, for me,
Mm,
again, we're 5 films into the series. There's been 5 very positive reviews from myself, waxing lyrical about the quality of them, memories with them as children, as with adults. Finding Nemo is just another one to add to that list where I can't, aside from the fact I dislike the 2 lead characters, I can't really point out anything outrageous, anything detracts me. The animation is superb. The soundtrack is magnificent. The characters almost I like all of them, but I think they're
mm,
interesting enough to function. And I do
yeah.
feel it succeeds in telling a tale of 2 fish traveling the ocean. It feels like they've gone on the adventure of adventures. They've met the most ridiculous, insane things, whether it being chased by seagulls or with pelicans. We didn't even really talk about that sort of thing. And there's so much that this film does in 100 minutes, and it doesn't
Mm,
feel like a second is wasted nor a second too long on any moment. So it's a
mm.
glowing final thought from me.
Yeah, this is one. I think I even said this in the Toy Story one. It's a film I loved when I was a kid. It's a film I've always kind of loved, and now having rewatched it, compared to Toy Story, where I know I've always loved it, this kind of now has a newfound appreciation. It's always had a soft spot for me because it is probably the first film I saw in the cinema. But now having rewatched it as an older person and really appreciating all the elements to it, it really does hold up. Like compared to Monsters Inc. and some of the other early Pixar's that hold up for one specific reason or another, like Toy Story is the first CG animated film, and Monsters Inc. is arguably one of the funniest Pixar films. So like they have specific things. Finding Nemo just holds up because it's just an all round well made animated movie. And though I can say that about the other ones, it's more so for this one than some of the others. Again, that's not me putting any shade on the others. It just more so applies to this one because you can tell that there is like a level of craft and a level of personality and attention to detail that has been there in the others, but it's like really front and center with Finding Nemo. I just love the attention to details. I love the look of the film. I love the sound of it. Yeah, it again similar to you. I love it. I always have, and yeah, it's a glowing review from me as well.
Excellent. That is going to be how we round up this review. You might be thinking, what is coming next? Well, we've spoke about The Incredibles a couple of times, and you'll look at your screen and see the next 4 episodes. We've got The Incredibles coming on the 30th of December. We're then going to head into 2026 with the first Cars film, Ratatouille, Wally. There's 4 original films back to back to back to back. I cannot wait to talk about those, reveal some of the guests we have prepared for them. We are batch recording these, so we're going to slowly get a bit of a break. I think after Ratatouille, there might be a time gap of 3 to 4 weeks. So I will always say, drop us your thoughts, your feedback. It's a new series. It's something new. We're looking at a studio. Any feedback is always appreciated. Any recommendations for guests, you name it, we are always there to listen. Aaron, it's been a pleasure to have you back on once more. Where can people find you, and what are you up to at the moment?
So as usual, you can find me Aaron at the movies on both YouTube and TikTok. I almost said Instagram. That could have been completely wrong. My Instagram and Blue Sky and I guess Twitter, but I don't really use it, is Arun Ather. So you can find me there as well. I'm still writing stuff for the likes of Get Your Comic On and Film Hounds and all that good stuff. And probably very soon I will be doing my best of the year video.
Excellent. So everybody, please subscribe to Aaron. Follow him on there. We always have one. We will have you on some more of these. Not me demanding it, but there's a long list, and I know there's some films specifically we want to get you on for. So we'll be able to have you back. Everybody watching at home, once again, more than welcome to comment your thoughts on Finding Nemo, your thoughts on Pixar, your thoughts on the series so far, things you're looking forward to, things you're not. If you want to find us to find out what we're working on, other videos, you can get our social medias. Linktree.com/cinemasavvy. That will put you through to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, Blue Sky, you name it. We're on all of those. As I said, we will be back next Tuesday. It's very close to Christmas at the time this video going up, and we will have our last Christmas classic video tomorrow, which we're looking forward to recording. But details are obviously going to be on social medias. If you're watching the Christmas episodes, you'll see we announce every film at the end of each one. So that is going to be me rounding out. Once again, thank you all so much for watching. Take care, and I'll see you on the next one.